Hi everybody, and today I'm going to be sowing a number of seeds. A couple of days ago we had an extremely hard frost which made it look like it had snowed, but it hadn't. It's just a very hard frost. And I know people, and there are YouTube videos up showing people sowing quite a few seeds, which is possible, but you'll probably notice that the majority of them are sowing seeds in greenhouses or polytunnels or things like that, because it's very easy for the beginners to think, oh my heavens, I must be behind, I haven't done anything. But please don't think that at all. A lot of the people who've been growing for a while or who have greenhouses can sow some of these seeds a bit earlier. And because you've got to think that once you've germinated the seeds, which could be in a propagator, if you're indoors or on your windowsill, once they've germinated, you've got to think about what you're going to do with them. And the thing that damages a lot of the seeds is that they become very leggy, and that weakens the plant, and sometimes you lose them. Because indoors it's warmer than they want with not enough light ratio. So they grow towards the light because they can grow fast because it's warmer, and they're growing towards the light because there's not enough of it in the winter months. We only have a certain amount of hours of daylight. So really, if you don't have what I call kit, which is sort of greenhouses, polytunnels, grow lights, things like that, then don't worry. Sow your seeds a little later when it starts to warm up and the days become longer. And on the whole, these seeds will actually catch up with the things that we're sowing now. So you're probably thinking, well, why are you bothering to sow now then? And that's because a lot of us get very itchy fingers that we kind of want to get sowing. Some people want to grow vegetables or are trying to be self-sufficient, and that's the category I'm in, or itchy fingers too. And also some people, just want to give things a try some early crops. But you've got to be able to look after them once they've germinated. So think about what you want to do. And a little later on, I'll show you some things that I've used in the past to give them some protection. So the kind of things that you could sow now, if you didn't have a greenhouse, are probably, or what I would chance growing now if I didn't have a greenhouse, are probably spring onions, spinach, let me think, possibly, oh, I know, rocket, which is what I'm growing. I'm going to plant that. I'm not going to do radishes because you really need to plant them out fairly soon after they get about this big, and the slugs and snails in this wet weather will just eat them. But I'm actually going to put some in because I'm going to plant these in my greenhouse. But I wouldn't do that necessarily. So red and green salad onions, rocket, spinach, just trying to think, what else would I risk? I might actually risk a few lettuces as well, because some of them are pretty hardy and could take, if you've just got a little bit of cover outside, you could give that a go. In addition, I would probably, and I am going to sow some herbs, parsley, chives and coriander, because coriander love the cold. So once they get to a certain size, if you could give them a little bit of protection, they'll be fine. And as the month warms up, they'll survive anyway without any protection. So I would grow some coriander. But many of the other things I would just leave until later on in February, March. And you really won't be that far behind at all. Last year I grew some Nairobi sugar snap peas, and on the packet it says sow in April, but it's February now. And I thought I'd experiment in trying to grow some very early sugar snap peas, because we love these and they're great in stir fries and all sorts of things. And after not having any lovely fresh peas, greens and things like that, we were kind of desperate for some nice veg. So I thought I'll trial some of those sugar snap peas. And when they came up, so I sowed them and germinated them in the house. And when they were about this big, I put them into a tub and grew them on in the greenhouse. You could, if you're going to get a very, very hard frost, put some fleece around it. But we grew it without, but I know that we've had some very hard frost recently. So I might do this year is be prepared with some fleece just in case I need to wrap them. But last year they came up really well and we got a decent portion of sugar snap peas. So I thought this year I'm going to go bigger and grow more of them into a couple of containers that I've got over on the allotment. And I've prepared some to sow now, and I'm going to sow them in these larger cell trays that I get from, where do I get them from? Oh my heavens, it's gone out of my mind. But anyway, I'll put it up underneath here. And I'm going to sow them in these and leave them in the house to germinate. But what I'm doing this year, which I have done in the past, is I soak the seed before I'm going to put them in. Now, the normal seed, let me just show you with some of these, and I haven't drained them. So the normal seed looks like this, and the seeds that I've soaked for a few hours look like this. Can you see that? Nice and chunky, fat, like you've soaked marrowfat peas. So that's fantastic, and that should give us a little bit of an advance on the germination. Just get this runaway one. And I do that when I don't actually, in the summer I don't normally do that because I give them a good water, but because it's winter and it's cold, I'm not going to water them very much at all, because the other thing that happens in winter when it's cold and you haven't got a lot of sun to sort of soak up some of the moisture or evaporate some of the moisture and warm the whatever it is, the peas or the beans, you're at risk of rotting. So you can rot the peas and beans. So I'm not really going to water very much, which is why I'm soaking them now, to give them a chance of fattening up. But then I'll give them a very light water, and then I'm not going to water them again until I can see that the soil is very dry, and then I will give them another light water. But I'm just going to go off and drain these peas now and then sow them, and I'll come back to you in a second. Here we go. Here are the drained peas, and I'm just going to plant 3 of these peas in each of the cells. And I'll just show you doing that for a couple of the cells. So I multi-sow these. I put 3 peas into a cell, and then what I'll do is just cover them with some compost, which I'll do in a second. So that's the seed tray pot sown now, with 3 seeds in each cell. And I'm just going to lightly cover it with some, well, not that lightly, but I'm going to cover the seeds now with some compost, like this. And this is just ordinary potting compost I bought from the local garden centre. Again, nothing special. Some people want to use seed compost. That's a little bit more expensive, but as you get more experience with gardening, people start having their own preferences, what works for them, some brands, because not all compost is equal. Some stuff is a lot better than others, and you'll learn that as you're growing. And then I'm just going to give it another little push down gently, because as I said, when these start to germinate, they will push up. So I just want to firm them down a bit, but not too much, because I don't want them to be wedged in and not be able to push through the compost. So just a light push just to firm the top, and that will help it also put the roots down as well as the green shoots up. So just like that. Level it off one more time. Put my stick in, my label, just to remind me what it is, because I always forget. And then I'm going to give that a very light water and just leave it in the house to germinate. And regularly it sort of takes maybe 7 to 10 days, but we'll look. It's going to depend on how cold we get. And I know that next week the weather forecast is telling me that we're going to be very cold with some possible sleet or snow. And that's in London, and that's cold for us. So here we go, just a little light water. And that's it. And I'm not going to water it again for some time, until I can actually see this is dried, the compost is dried out, because I don't want the seeds to rot. And because it doesn't have that kind of warmth, you do have a risk of the seeds rotting. But all being well, these will germinate very nicely, and we will have a very early crop of Mange 2 peas. So there are two main ways I'm going to be sowing seeds today. One is in a seed tray like this. And these are quite small cells, so depending on what seed you're growing will depend on what size cells you want to sow them in and how deep. These are only small ones, and in this I will be sowing many of my seeds, such as the spring onions, the spinach. You could also, if you wanted to, put a single seed of lettuces in each of these as well. They're nice and small, so you're not using too much compost up. So this is one of the ways I'm going to be sowing seeds today. And the other way is in a seed tray like this, where I'll put a number of seeds in and then prick them out a little later on. And I use this for a lot of the brassicas. And I use this for things like the lettuces, and then prick them on. So it's going to depend on your own personal preference and what you're used to and how you like to work. And everybody is slightly different. So also in these seed trays, as the weather warms up, I will put in a single either cucumber or courgette or pumpkin or anything like that from that family, and then pot them on so they'll germinate. And once they've just come out of their leaves and they're a little sturdy, I'll pop these out and then just pop them on, and it makes being able to grow a lot of seedlings in one tray with not too much space really easy. So in this seed tray, which is the small one, small cells, most of the vegetables I sow, I multi-sow. So in other words, I put more than one seed into each of these cells. And how many seeds I put in will depend on a number of things. One is how big the seeds are. Like, for example, if you're doing the cucumbers and things like that, I'll only put one seed in. But for many of the other things that I multi-sow, spring onions, I'll put maybe a small pinch, maybe up to 9 or 10 seeds. If they're things like radishes, I'll put 4. I multi-sow leeks as well, and I put about 4 in those, and onions. So the things, a beetroot, I multi-sow the beetroot. I multi-sow the spinaches, and there I would put 2 or 3 seeds in. So because you get more crops per area, and B, when you put, say, beetroot in, they'll come up as a clump, and then as they grow, they push one another out to grow bigger. And then you can take the biggest one from this bunch, and which will leave the others to grow a bit bigger. But for some things, they'll just carry on pushing out until they make a fair size vegetable. And I've never really had any problems with them not getting big enough for a good crop. So don't fear about using more than a couple of seeds into a cell. It's actually got lots of benefits to it. So in this seed tray, I'm going to plant spinach. And spinach is a very, very hardy plant. So once it gets to a decent size, that it can maintain itself, don't put them out too early, because it needs to be reasonably robust plant to kind of get its roots in this cold, windy weather. If you can cover them with something, a bit of fleece or something like that, that's even better still, to give them a little bit of protection. But if you can't, you could possibly sow this early and just plant it out. So what I'm going to be doing is planting these out. I do have some fleece on the allotment, so I will be covering them. So I'm not worried about sowing them so early. I know that they'll be fine. And oh, there you go. Also, with these trays, you don't have to plant them all up with one thing. You can just have a few rows of different sorts of seeds, as long as you mark them. So you know what they are. Otherwise you'll have all these things popping up and you haven't got a clue. So in these I'm going to put 3 seeds, and unfortunately some of them have spilt, so I'm going to have to just move some seeds around. So 3 or 4 seeds this size is fine, and I shall just do that now. Let's sort these out a little bit. So it's not going to matter if it's 3 or 4 seeds. And then once I've sown these seeds, I will cover them either with these, I'll cover them with some light compost. If they were a very small seed or a lighter seed, I might put some, like lettuces. If I was doing lettuces, I'd probably put vermiculite on the top. So you have to make the judgment. But even if you put compost on, it should be fine, as long as it's not too deep. So don't put too much compost on, just give it a light sprinkle. So the other method of sowing seeds is in a seed tray like this. This is a half seed tray. Many of the others are double this size. So like this, a big seed tray. But I'm not going to want to sow too much at the moment. What I'm going to be putting in are some green cabbages, some red cabbages, a few cauliflowers, and a few calabrese. So I'm just going to be doing those. Hang on, let me just turn that round for you. So just some, and I'm just using a very basic golden acre cabbage. It's a round cabbage. And some red drumhead as a red cabbage, marathon, which is the calabrese. And again, I'm going to hold these back in the greenhouse for a bit longer than, I'm going to sort of grow them on a little bit in pots in the greenhouse, because I want to have another sowing for after I put the ones that are already in the greenhouse out, so I have a succession. of calories for ourselves. And I've also got some graffiti cauliflowers, which I think graffiti. Do you know, I can't remember whether I think this is the purple one, purple cauliflower. So that's why I'm only using a small seed tray, because I don't want too many of these seeds. But later on, when I do them for the food bank, I will be sowing a lot more, so I'll use a bigger seed tray. So I'll just show you sowing these. So we'll do the red drum head and just make a little dent like this, because I do want to sow a few and I don't want them to be too close because it makes pricking them out a bit more difficult. So this is where I'm going to sow the red drum head across here, and I'm going to put quite a few seeds in because I know that other people want them from me. So I'm growing enough for myself and for others. Red cabbages take a long time to grow, and last year I put some seeds in towards the end of the year, kept them in the greenhouse over winter, and then put them out, and I had some really early red cabbages, and I missed the boat on that one this year, which I'm very sad about, because it's lovely to have red cabbages in the summer for coleslaws and salads and things, especially barbecuing. So I didn't do it, so I'm going to start sowing some now. So it'll be note to self: get your finger out and get organised. But in my own defence, I did have a lot on. So I'm going to put those in there and just make sure I've got my stick, my label. I don't know what way that is. I hope that you can see that. But anyway, putting the label in, because not so much with the red cabbages, but if you're sowing a number of different varieties of cabbage, they'll all look the same when they come up, and you'll have no idea what you're actually planting up. And then what I like to do is to sow, so that's the red cabbage. So I shall now put in some white cabbage, and as I said, these are, if I can find the little stick, which I can't at the very minute. Where are the start? There it is, the little label. So these are some golden acre. I bought, it feels like there's enough in this packet actually. I bought a second packet just in case. I wasn't sure how many seeds were still left in it, because it's an open packet. So again, I shall make sure I leave a bit of a trail, a little gap in between, so I can know what's what. But the beauty about growing the green cabbages next to the red cabbages is the colour is the clue. So I should be able to tell these apart. And again, I have people who want these from me, so I am going to be sowing quite a few seeds. It's not just for me. Should be enough. And so this is a nice round, quick growing cabbage. They seem to do quite well, but I also do grow a number of other varieties that I know are tastier, are better in coleslaws, various other things. So don't just sow one cabbage, experiment. So that's the golden acre. And some people will cover the seeds up as they're sowing them. I tend to leave it to the end. The reason for that is then I can see where I've sown stuff, because now I'm going to put another 2 rows in, so I can see that's where that's ended. If I was to cover it up, I wouldn't be quite sure how much distance to give myself until the next row. So because I can see it, I know I will leave this much until the next thing. And I don't think, feeling the, actually, I won't make it too big because I've got a funny feeling that there aren't very many seeds in this packet, and I do want to slip in some graffiti. But there are only 10 seeds in the graffiti packet. So yeah, there's not very many seeds here. So I should just, whoops. It's a little bit thick, but there you go. So that's the marathon. I'll pop that in there. And then last but not least, I'll put the graffiti in. And there are only 10 seeds in this packet, so I'm not really going to need a lot of space. I'll just do a small row here, like this. I love growing the different coloured cauliflowers. It's just a bit of fun. I'm not sure that they taste much different, but it's just fun having different coloured cauliflowers. The seeds are obviously a little more expensive. You want to always make sure when there's only a few and they're so expensive, you've got them all out the packet. And I should just move these to give them a bit more space here, like that. Put my little label in, and then I shall get some compost. Sprinkle a little bit of compost on. You don't need much. Make sure I spread it out nicely. Like that. As I said, you don't need much at all. Just make sure they're all covered. I'm going to give this a little drink, but I'm also going to just dab it down a little bit, just very lightly. But you want to make sure all the seeds are in decent contact with the compost, and just knock out any air pockets. So just very lightly, I've done that, and I should just give this a little light water, not too much. Leave them in the house until they germinate, and then pop them up. Now, I keep on saying, you know, many people that you'll see on YouTube have been gardening for a while. Not all of them, because some people are showing you their grown experience from the very beginning. But I think what's important to know is you don't have to spend lots of money on kit. So I just want to show you this, and this is what I'm going to put my lettuces in. So we bought some cakes the other day, and it came in one of these. So every time I buy something that comes in something like this, it's like having a mini propagator. And I just sow my seeds in like I did the seed tray. Make sure you, well actually I don't label them, but I make sure I know where the different seeds are. And that you could do by marking it with a piece of tape at the end, like that, with a number on, so you can reference it. Give it a light water, and I mean a light water, because A, you don't want the seeds to rot, and B, it hasn't got holes in the bottom. Some people do put holes in the bottom, I don't tend to do that. I just make sure I only water them lightly. And then you clip this down like that. And there you have an instant little propagator. Leave them at home, leave them indoors. And as soon as you start to see them germinating or coming up, you can open your little propagator. Oops, sorry about the noise. It's closed better than I thought. You can open your little propagator, and if you've got some labels, you can then pop them in. If not, you've still got your little stickers down the bottom, or however you're going to decide to label them. And there you go. So it's cost no money. You've recycled the plastic, which is, I like to repurpose anything I possibly can. And there you go. And if you're starting up, or if you're a bit tight on the old budget, don't think about growing is an expensive thing. Just look around and see what you can reuse. And if you don't have something like this, don't worry. Just use something like this. Lots of our food now comes in all this plastic packaging. And if you're not sowing very many seeds, this would be totally fine. You could just put some holes in the bottom or not. But anything like this is totally fine as well. So I planted up a mini propagator with some lettuces, and I just remembered I cut up a load of these yogurt cartons to make labels. So I just cut some of these up to put them in here to label these. And all I need to do, I've given them a light water, is to now shut this up, leave them in the house here, and they'll germinate very quickly. And once I see them germinating, I'll lift the lid up because it needs some air. And then once they're big enough, I'll prick them out. So you often hear people talking about pricking out their plants or pricking them on. And you'll also hear people saying about that plants have got really leggy. So I just want to show you what that kind of means. So this is a seed tray of brassicas I sowed before I went on holiday. And these are some of the cabbages that are still sort of coming up. And you can see this one here is just about the right size of plant to lift out of this compost and put into some either a pot or a bigger seed tray, a bigger cell tray individually. This one here is also, you can't see, it's a bit blurred. So this one here, I would say, is the perfect size. And this one here is just on the right side of being okay to prick out. But these here at the back, you can see are really, really what we call leggy. Not a lot of top, a lot of long roots. And these plants tend to be weaker and very hard to then pot into cells. So to counteract that, for these, because I don't actually want to lose them, I've filled one of these longer seed trays up, and I will put them in there here. And I've actually put compost in the whole tray, although I'm obviously not going to use the whole tray with these calets. So what's left, I'm going to pot up my early sweet peas, so I don't mind because they need to go into trays like this. So I'll probably manage about maybe 3 and a bit rows with these calets, which as I said, I didn't want to lose. But I would damage or break these if I tried to pop them up into a regular cell tray. You could maybe just manage to do it into pots, but you don't really want to use too much compost up. It's kind of a bit of a expensive way of potting up your seeds. So try to pot them up when they're small like these, and they're easier to manage and put into cell trays, and therefore minimizing the amount of not only space but also compost that you're going to need to fill the trays up. So if you don't have a greenhouse but you want to start sowing early, here are some of the things that you could put over your plants and put outside to give them some protection. These are just some examples. Hang on, I'll show you one more. This is some clear plastic cloches that I use as well. So this, or anything like this, that will give your plants a little bit of protection from the cold and the wind. And choose some more winter hardy or cold hardy plants to sow if you're going to do an early sowing. So whatever you decide to do, happy sowing and growing. Let's hope it's not too wet a spring like a couple of years ago where we lost an awful lot of crops. Oh, last year, to tell you the truth, I remember it was really wet and cold for a long time, because I remember we had to keep our tomatoes indoors for a lot longer, and we were absolutely overwhelmed because it was just too cold and too wet to start putting them outside, and my greenhouse was full. So lesson learned for me. So whatever you're doing, wherever you are, happy growing.